Alex is an incredible person that I have known now for getting, I don't know, 4.5, 5 years, something
5
like that.
years, yeah.
And we've been through many, many different things, and we've learned a lot from each other. And something that I've learned, and everything in her bio is really accurate. So Alex is an expert at dealing with all personalities and environments. She's recognized for her ability to manage, to nurture, and help individuals understand themselves better by developing the right skills. For over 30 years, Alex has worked within the employment services space with a broad range of people who've benefited from her professional skill and knowledge. Her passion and mission are to help people become the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. She helps extract people's true talents, understand themselves better, and develop the right skills they need, opening countless doors of opportunities. Love that. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So,
And in the federal space and the prison space.
yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
I'm looking forward, and I'm sure we're going to get to hear a few of your stories also, particularly in the prison space, that I've enjoyed and appreciated and valued and learned a lot from. So, Alex, I would love to start with this question. What is it that prompted your interest in becoming an effective communicator, connector, and influencer? Wonderful
Wow.
threesome.
Thank you. And thanks for the intro too. And what a wonderful question. Thanks, Yaja. So what prompted my interest in, I guess, becoming an effective communicator, connector, and influencer was my own experience as someone who was born overseas and come to Australia with a cultural barrier, cultural communication barrier growing up. So for me, it was very isolating as a kid to pretty much, not being able to communicate and to create and build relationships and have friends. Actually, I was very alone growing up when I first came to Australia, and because of my language barrier and I guess not knowing the words to use and how to articulate what was on my mind, and even more than that, even growing up, it caused a lot of I was lonely, and it caused also a lot of conflict within my relationships. And as I started to, that was my initial I guess, interest in it and what prompted it. But as I started to grow up and to, become a young adult and all the rest of it, I started to notice conflicts even within my own family. So with my parents, for example, my friends, and then later my relationships with within my I guess, my partner, my husband and stuff like that, and then school and stuff. So and then the workplace, and it started to sort of evolve from there. So for me, it was understanding why there was such a barrier. And as I transitioned into the workforce, I suddenly realized that it was really hard to connect with people unless we knew how to communicate effectively.
So these barriers, thank you. And I appreciate what you're sharing there. So it's interesting. It's about these barriers that they're invisible things, and yet we see them, but not many people can identify with them. So how were you able to discover what it was that were these barriers?
Yeah, great question again. And again, came back to the isolation, to the arguments, to conflict, to why aren't they getting me? Why can't I get my point across to these people so that they can understand me? Because that's what we feel as individuals. Like, I just want to be understood.
Yes.
Why can't you just get me?
Yes.
And so I remembered too, my first leadership role ever, I was working for the bank at that point, and I was running a call center with another leader. So we had about 300-400 people on the call center.
Yeah.
And to be able to get people to do what I wanted them to do was challenging. Even more than that, trying to mentor my team on how they could better communicate to the customers over the phone was challenging. So there was a lot of challenges at that point. And that really sort of, I just couldn't understand it. So what I really wanted to do was to be able to develop that skill to effectively communicate with anyone and everyone really, no matter what the barrier.
Mm.
And by that, I mean not just necessarily a cultural barrier. It could be a barrier over the phone, like now the COVID thing, we're all sort of working online, and
Yeah.
we're talking through computers, right? So we can't touch,
Yeah.
each other to be able to create that connection. So I really wanted to delve in and understand, well, what the hell? Like, why is it that some people can get along and some people don't?
Mm.
That's what drove me, even more than that, Yaja, if I may add, is also learning to ask the right questions in order to get the right results.
Yeah, got it.
Um,
Got it. Yeah. And it's
yeah,
interesting that you're saying all this, because I think a lot of people say, oh, but we simply don't have chemistry, or we're just different. We're simply different. And therefore, that gives us an excuse to say, well, I don't have to make an effort.
yeah.
I don't have to try. I don't have to try anything new. I don't have to ask a different question.
Yeah, interesting you say that, and I guess it's so it it all comes back to the result that you want.
Mm.
So if you want to, and I understand and I hear you, and I hear that all the time, our stars don't align, or we're not meant to be, or I'm an Aries, you're a Leo, or I'm a Leo, you're an
Yeah.
Aries, or whatever, right? All that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is, firstly, for what purpose are you communicating with this person? What is it that you want? Because ultimately, every interaction we have, whether we like to admit it or not, we want to have an outcome, right? Whether it's to befriend somebody, whether it's to create an incredible relationship, emotional or not, whether it's to get a sale, whatever it is, we've got to put that aside and really understand and get down and dirty with that person. In other words, understand them deeply,
Yeah.
really connect with them. And that takes skill, because we're not taught this. Similar to what Stephen said earlier in terms of around values,
Mm.
we're not taught these things. And these are the skills that we need, because once we leave school, we've got to learn how to communicate.
Yeah, of
We've
course.
got to learn how to communicate with everybody, even your Safeway person, even your VA person, everybody. And we don't learn these skills well enough.
And it's interesting because, like with values, overall communication, developing that connection, developing that ability to influence, it's like we're creating a new language.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and it's foreign to us. So it's understandable. It can be frustrating, difficult, and yeah, can cause
It
us.
can be, and it is also, if I may add too, I don't know if anyone can resonate with me here, but to be able to learn how to say something, to be able to really effectively communicate what's in your heart, what's in your head, without the fear of offending somebody, without the fear of maybe hurting someone's feelings or pissing them off even, right? Or even without the fear of being judged, rejected, or even ridiculed.
Yeah.
That's a skill. And I felt that through my upbringing, in that I didn't have the skill nor the language to be able to connect with even my parents, right? Because
Mm.
I felt that I was always being judged.
Yeah.
But when we start to build that muscle, and really, like anything, like even the values, and even what Jeffrey said too, it's building that muscle to be able to get your point across. Now, if I may just share very quickly, ironically though, and this is what blows my mind, I was always the go-to person in my workplace. Like, oh, whenever you get an aggressive customer, just get Alex, she'll deal with it. It's like, what? I don't get that. Or whenever you get in a situation, a difficult conversation, just get Alex. I couldn't understand, because I felt I had a barrier.
Got it.
I felt I couldn't communicate, yet I was the go-to person to communicate and be able to appease these people. And I thought, why are you coming to me? Like, I have no freaking idea.
Yeah.
Yet I must have naturally developed these skills because of my desperation. I'm going to use that.
That's interesting.
My desperation to
Yeah.
be accepted, to connect, because I was so alone and isolated growing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I forcefully had to learn those things, yeah. So I think that's what drove my interest as well, in that's what triggered my interest in human behavior, behavioral profiling, all of that, and communication.
I get that. And it's interesting that up until then you weren't even aware of the skills, the processes, the strategies that you were using until you started looking at the behavioral profiles and really learning about it to see what it was that you were doing already.
Yeah, yeah, it sort of
I love
surfaced then because I think we sort of, what happens is that, and I can't remember who I was listening to the other day. I was listening to a podcast and they said it, they put it so beautifully, you know, in that we build a muscle around everything.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it doesn't matter, I think, how many certificates you have, how many diplomas, and I have them, how many degrees and all the rest of it you have, unless you get your hands dirty, you really can't experience it enough until you really experience it.
You got it. Yeah,
Because that's a skill that's built, you know, that's for me, for people in my situation too, I guess. It's just, it's a learned behavior in the end.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? If I may, and thank you for that. I can relate to that muscle building thing. Now, Rebecca had made a comment here. Where are we? Where is that one? Let me see. It was just a little bit of, it really is a skill to be able to connect when you're not together. Communication is our responsibility, I believe. So that was a really valid point that you
Mm.
made there.
It really is, Rebecca. That's a great point you make because, you know, we often say, oh, it's not up to me to be able to make this relationship work.
Yes.
Well, actually, yeah, it is. And if you want to lead the way, it really is.
Mm.
So, and it's showing people the way. I believe when we lead the way, we show people the way. And now having Jeffrey's comment in the back of my head, because I really love what he said too about, you know, people learning from people and, you know, it's not necessarily the leader, but we can all be leaders really. It's not
Absolutely.
necessarily the title per se. It's
Completely.
leading the way to change and
Yeah.
become that person with humility, you know.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. Yes, indeed. And of course, based on what you were talking about, the developing the skills.
mm,
Rebecca was also saying that it doesn't come as a natural strength at first. It's
no,
a necessity, if we want to call it that, a necessity to learn to communicate, to connect, and to influence in a way that works for us.
absolutely,
Um,
Rebecca, you're so
yeah.
right. For me, it was desperation to belong. It really was. I felt so alone. You know, there's nothing worse than being. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was in grade prep, and I look. Excuse me for sharing this example, but it really stood out for me because I think it traumatized me.
Mm,
I remember in grade prep, I needed to go to the toilet, and I had no language for that. So I soiled my pants, right? Because I had no idea. I had to say I wanted to go to the toilet, and everyone
yeah.
laughed at me. And then to make it even worse, because my parents weren't contactable, they were both working,
Mm,
and we had no one in this country at that point. I was given a boy's pair of pants to wear. Um, and
mm,
not only did my language barrier isolate me, so did the fact that suddenly then there's this girl who,
yeah.
you know, they were calling all these names, had a pair of pants on. So it was
Yeah.
my desperation to belong.
Yeah. Look, I'm my heart goes out to you, even though you're not that little girl now.
Oh, I'm not that little
But
girl
still, the
anymore.
fact
No.
that it happened, I mean, for any child to have to experience that kind of
Yeah,
thing, it would have been just awful, devastating. And I can appreciate the desperation. Especially
totally.
that wouldn't have been the only time. There would have been other
No,
occasions.
absolutely. And there are still people out there that are experiencing that, be it in
Yes.
grade prep, be it in workplace, whatever. So it's being mindful of that too. And then as an individual, as a professional, as a
Yeah.
mature
Yeah.
adult,
Yes.
to have that ability to language so that you can connect with that person, you know.
Yeah. I
That's
love that. I love that. And yes, you've got some empathy coming on and some acknowledgement. Thank you for sharing for
Thank
such
you. I
something that's
appreciate
so
that.
personal and so distressing, Alex. That would have
Oh,
felt awful.
oh, thank you. Yes, yes. I do remember that like it was
Yes.
yesterday.
Yeah.
So thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate your acknowledgement and your
It's
validation.
funny.
It means a lot to me.
And isn't it intriguing how we can, things from such a long time in our past can feel so real right now?
Yeah. And it's in those things,
Mm.
Yaja, that help us develop and expand and evolve, I think, as individuals, if we embrace it,
Yeah.
and we allow it and we lean in on it and
Mm.
grow from that, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
And then how can we help others do the same, I think is really
Exactly.
important.
Yeah, exactly. And especially now as adults, not that we can't have those experiences, but we know that we can handle it. We know that all we have to do is find a way, and things can change for us. And that easily leads me into, another question I'd love for you to dive into for me, and that
Sure.
how has the skill of being able to read people, communicate with people, changed the way in which you interact and connect?
Yeah, wow, that's a really great question too. So thank you. It's been really fascinating for me because it has opened up many doors for me.
Mm,
Leading many teams along the way, but also working in prisons, and that I think has been
mm,
something that's in my heart still. I think I was so privileged to be able to work in the prison space for 10 years, and it was probably one of the best 10 years I've had.
yeah.
And over time, and for people who know me and have worked with me, in fact, one of the speakers we had last month used to be my supervisor when I
Yes.
was working in the prison.
Yeah,
So
Claire, she was wonderful.
yeah, and one thing I loved about that, and I'd interviewed and met over 29,000 prisoners in that time. And I had 29,000 conversations. And what I loved about that is that I was able to extract and learn so much about these people that it helped me, my learning and my ability to effectively
Yeah.
communicate and read people allowed me to be able to extract the best from them.
Yes, that's
You know,
fascinating.
yeah.
Fascinating. And in difficult situations. And I'd love for you to share that story about the prisoner who was in isolation or something. And
All right.
yeah, that
Yeah,
would be
I
that
love
that
that
is
story.
so easy to relate to, even though most of us haven't been in that situation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would love to share that. So I will definitely share that right now. But I just want to make one more point
Yeah.
in that whilst working in there, I was numerous times faced with challenging and sometimes even life-threatening situations. And so being able to have this ability to read people, and I'm not talking read people woo-woo, that sort of stuff. It's being able to embrace their everything and their energy and everything really helped me to communicate them, I suppose, and negotiate my way through those circumstances.
Because it's interesting. I apologize for interrupting, but it's interesting you were saying there everything, because I think people forget that it's not just what we hear that is communicated to us.
Mm.
It's people's facial expressions, it's their eyes, their movements, their physiology, how they move forward and backwards. And there's so many aspects that help you read people. And you've
Absolutely.
become quite the expert in that.
Absolutely. And this is where it brings me to the story you raised a moment ago. And of course, look, that's one of many, that was 10 years of prison servicing and then some, so
Yes.
even more than that. But there was this one time, because every Tuesday, what was happening is every Tuesday I'd go out there and I'd run a group seminar to anywhere from 20 to 100 prisoners that were in a room with me.
Mm,
And then after that, I would take them one-on-one and I'd have an hour conversation with them.
wonderful.
But this particular morning, I went into the prison and the coordinator said, "Oh, Alex, we have a bit of a situation. One of the guys you have to interview today is in isolation." And I said, "Oh, yeah, that's cool. What does that mean?" And because I had no bloody idea. And she said, "Well, it just means that you have to interview him. You can't have him in a room by yourself," because I preferred to have the guys in there by myself. I needed them to know that it was their safe space.
Yes.
Um, and and I needed to, and then she said to me, "Well, you have to interview this guy sitting at the doorway of his cell." I said, "Well, I can't go close to him." She said, "No." I said, "Oh, well, that's crap. No, you can't. And also, in addition to that, you're going to have prison officers behind you." And I've gone, "But what about his privacy?" Because that meant a lot to me. That's how I connected. I
Yeah.
needed them to understand that
Develop
they were,
trust.
well, yeah, they were individuals too, right? I wasn't there to judge them. I was there to help them.
Mm.
Anyway, I said, "No worries, we'll make it work. Let's do this."
And you've never connected, you'd never had a
Never met
connection with
this
this
guy, but
guy
well, I'd
before?
never met any of the people before. It was just new lists every week.
Got it.
It was up to the parole board of who they released, and so I had no idea of it until that morning.
Right.
So anyway, I said, "Yeah, okay, let's do it. Let's do him first. That way I can spend because." So I'm thinking to myself as I was walking there, "Oh man, I really need to make this guy feel that he's safe." because
Mm.
I asked them some really deep personal questions, right? So it wasn't
Yeah.
just, hey, how you doing? What's your name? It was
Yeah.
deep personal stuff that I needed to extract from these people.
Yeah.
So whilst I was walking there, I was thinking, I've got to do this. I've never met this human before, and he doesn't trust me. In fact, I'm his enemy. He probably hates my guts because I work for this federal department that I know most people hate, right? So that's okay. I need to be able to get him to like me, to trust me. How the hell am I going to do this? So anyway, I got there and doors open, closed, you know, the big bang and all the rest of it that you get from prison doors. And we sat there and my heart was beating. I was so nervous. And I sat at my chair and I had the prison officers and the coordinator behind me, and they've opened the door and here's this guy sitting all the way over there near the window. And I've gone, hey, how you doing?
Was he behind bars?
No, he was in a cell in isolation. It was management unit.
Yeah.
So all he had was a room,
Yep.
in this particular prison anyway, in
Yeah.
a room. They used to call it the slot back in the day, in Pentridge days. You know, it was
Oh,
like just an isolated, it was just a room with nothing apart from a toilet, a bed, and a shower that was sort of right up there. So they
got it.
didn't have
Gotta
access
get to it.
to,
Mhm.
yeah. Anyway, they opened the door and I sat down and I made sure that I positioned myself. Firstly, I needed to control myself first. So I needed to control the way in which I presented to him because I needed to build trust with him. So he needed to trust me. And I could not have my physiology in a way that I was better than him just because I worked where I worked. You know, that was not going to connect
No.
me with him. So firstly, it was positioning my physiology, my facial expressions, my tonality, the language that I used, because in my mind, I knew automatically that this guy had a certain background as soon as you see them, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a thing that I developed over the years, a
And
skill.
he'll have reservations and defenses up as
He hated
well.
my guts, absolutely, because I was working for this federal organization. So all of a sudden, already he hated me. I knew that, and that was okay. He had every right to, right? So anyway, when I sat down, I said, hey, how you doing? And he ignored me, which is fair enough. And I said, so my name's Alex, and I'm really sorry that I have to interview you here. You know, it really sucks. And that broke down the barrier. And then I saw a photo of he only had this one frame sort of sitting on the ledge of the window of his child. And I knew that that was what he valued. That was what was important to him. And I said, oh, I see you have a little one. You know, I do too. And I sort of went into that. I didn't. And I said, hey, you know what? We spoke about that. And then after I said to him, if you don't want to do this, I'm cool with it. I really am cool with it because I know this sucks. Like, this is not cool. So I was using his language. I was asking permission. I was giving him choice that he didn't have in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And from where I was sitting with the label that I was holding and the name tag that I had, although I had, and I hate using this word, I know I hate using the word hate too, but the thing is this, power, because of the name of the organization,
Yeah.
I didn't want him to know that that's who I was, because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And so I needed him to understand that just because I work for these dudes doesn't mean that I'm not human, right? And doesn't mean that I don't respect you as a human too.
Yeah.
So suddenly we broke down this. I was there for ages. It was so cool.
Oh, wow.
And he answered all of my questions, but I didn't ask them verbatim. I asked them to suit him. I ignored, and I set the space for him, and I said, doesn't matter who's here right now. For me, it's me here for you, right? I don't care where we are. I don't care who's around. Thing is that I'm here for you.
And you were listening, you were present to him.
I was ignoring what anyone else said and what I did without even thinking. And I got up to give him my pen because I was told not to do that. So I actually entered his space without even thinking. I've gone, oh, damn, that's not good. That's not cool, because I was told off later that I wasn't allowed to go into that space. Oh, well, nothing happened. You know, we built the trust. I felt in fact, I felt safer in those 10 years in prison than I did anywhere else, because we had each other's back.
Yes.
Every prisoner I met, I so trusted them. I know that sounds ironic, but geez, I did.
Mm.
I built that trust with them. This is what I say to people, Yaja, if I may share. And I love my stories because I'm currently writing another book that I'm writing a chapter on stuff like what my experiences. But one thing I've learned is that we need to understand and really observe people. And by that, I mean it starts from self.
Mm-hmm.
We need to position ourselves. Doesn't matter who we're talking to, whether it's the prisoner, whether it's your client that you're about to, meet, whether it's you want to build rapport and trust with people online, whether it's, it doesn't matter. But the thing is, communication starts with self.
Yeah.
So for me, it's positioning you as an individual, whole of you, not just what comes out of here, because before you open your mouth, people have judged you already. So it's how you position your physiology, your warmth, your tonality, the speed of your voice, how you hold yourself. And your facial expressions are so key. What I do is I read people for who they are.
Mm-hmm.
You learn this skill, you develop it over the years, you become an expert in it because you've tested and measured. What's worked for me was changing to that person. So I know that people in prison, or this particular person, generally speaking, I don't like to generalize, but the particular caliber, particularly because there's different levels in prison systems. Mm-hmm. So I knew that this particular level, I needed to change my language, my words, my everything to be like him.
Yes, exactly. And
I never wore a security thing. I never wore a buzzer.
Yes.
Because that communicated to them. Everything we wear, everything communicates something, right? So I never wore a buzzer, although I was expected to, which was a duress alarm thingy.
Yes.
I said no, and I got into trouble for that, and I was cool with that. But here's the thing, that communicated to them that I didn't trust them.
Absolutely.
That was a
That you were
barrier.
fearful.
Yeah, and I wasn't though.
Yeah.
There were times where I was, but I wasn't most times.
I'm really, really loving what you're saying there. And it's interesting because if this comment, and there's a few things that I'd like to discuss about that, it starts with the self. Because it's interesting because many of us might walk into a room and when we see someone is already being defensive, we think, well, I'm going to wait till you change before I change.
Yeah.
And really, communication starts with us first.
Totally.
Now, if I may, Stephen made a comment around this whole thing of physiology. And I'd say that physiology, or learning to understand physiology, is something new to many people. So please tell us more, Alex.
Oh, right. Okay. So thanks for the question, Steve.
And that's another whole day seminar, I think, in itself.
It absolutely is. And it's such a broad question too. And I love that you asked it. So thank you. So physiology is the way in which we position our body. Our body communicates warmth or not. Our body communicates barrier or openness, right? So it communicates warmth if we wanted to, and it communicates, sort of coldness. Distance. It communicates confidence, and it communicates fear.
Yes.
It communicates so many things. And so, for me to be able to firstly gain the trust of someone whom I'd never met before, I needed to position my body in that way where, one, it didn't show fear, and because that would not be cool for me as a, for any reason, because that also disengages as well, and it disconnects. So I don't want to make it. It wasn't about me. Absolutely. But also I needed to position my body in a way where it was calm.
Yeah. Where
it was okay, we've got this. I understand that when we're having an interview here, but it's okay, we've got this.
And so, open and confident, but not cocky.
Oh, not cocky at all. Absolutely not.
Out the window.
I love that you said that as well. So there's ways, and again, Stephen, and you're right, Yaja, and what you said, this is a whole 4 or 5 days of training, to extract all of what I've learned, to put it in a program, which I have, to teach people how to do that. But the thing is, it's just positioning yourself. The way I look at it, if I may, Stephen, and I trust this may help you, and if not, I'm cool with that. I'm happy to elaborate more. Is that I look at it when we approach a little child, for example, we're going to approach that little child, generally speaking, with love and warmth, to be able to create that trust, and give them the space. I know with my granddaughter, if when I see her first, I'll say, "Hey, Mia, did you want to give your Yaja a hug today? You don't have to. It's okay."
Yeah.
It's allowing and creating that space of permission, and trust,
and safety and trust. Yeah, I love that.
And that we are in it together, and I've got your back. And I'm cool with allowing you the space. My body is allowing them the space to when they're ready to build that trust with me.
I love that. Thank you so much. And it seems that you did answer Stephen's question, which is really fantastic.
Wonderful.
Interesting that you were all, the other aspect of starting with self that I wanted to broach was, I guess in the end, it's also about, or in the first instance, it's also about how we communicate with ourselves. If we don't know and we can't communicate with ourselves up here in the first instance, it's going to be very difficult, or more difficult, for us to communicate with others. And I know from experience.
Absolutely, Yaja. And what you said is right, in that, and that's why I really can't stress enough that I'm so big on uptime, downtime, and I'm not going to go into that conversation right now, but certainly what that means is make it about others. Often I hear in organizations, and having worked with leaders and teams and organizations over the years, is that people get into this automated thing, like we were talking with Stephen earlier, where, it's what the script says. So if you're if you're at a call center, they go through this script. We can't use script on human beings. No. We can't do that. And so it's really about remembering that. Become human, Yes, you have the script there as a guide, but for goodness sake, for you to be able to build rapport and trust with someone, you've got to be able to tailor that question to that individual. So how do you do that? Well, that's another training again. Absolutely. But the thing is, remember, would you like it? For example, if you had a really shitty day, because I know I did there a few weeks ago, I'll just share this very quickly just to give you an example of what I mean. A few weeks ago, we found out that my partner had a 4.3 centimeter growth on his pancreas.
Yes, I know. So I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We're working with that. That's not my point, but I appreciate your acknowledging me. Thank you. And what happened was, at that day when we found out there was a lot going on, we didn't know what was happening. Anyway, long story short, I get a call from the bank about some stuff.
Yes.
And I was very emotional, obviously, and you know what really I loved about this person on the other end of the phone? She could have gone in the script thing and just said, "Look, I'm ringing because of this, I'm ringing because of that, blah, 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 blah." Instead, she goes, "Hey, Alex, I hear you're a little bit upset." And I cried even more. And I said, "Yeah, I'm really down in the dumps right now. This is what's happened." She goes, "You know what? Let's not talk about this, but can I help you? Do you want to just talk about it?" She spoke nothing about the bank. Now, where I'm going with this is that's what human connection.
Absolutely. And that's what breaks down barriers.
Totally. And I said to her, "Hey, you know what? I just want to say thanks for treating me as a human being and acknowledging that I'm really in a shitty place right now." And that means so much to me. And I've gone and I've sung their praise. I mean, I would not bank elsewhere. And I've got to tell you, these people are awesome. And so this is what it means to be an incredible communicator.
Yes, it's beautiful.
And it's in the form.
You should try to find her.
Yeah, well, I've provided feedback to them in the bank. And what I'm going with this, Yaja, is that although we always have a script when we're at a call center, or even if we're running a thing online, remember that we've got human on the other end of that. And so it's breaking down those barriers.
It is. Absolutely. I love that. Thank you. And if I may, we're getting some wonderful responses and engagement in the chat group. Rebecca was actually saying, if we walk into a room looking uncomfortable and start speaking, we can be heard differently to when we walk in and build rapport. I
Absolutely.
love the concept of making it about the person you're talking to. And
Yeah.
that's something that Stephen also said, make it about others. Like you had said, that
Yeah.
uptime is making it about others. That's really
Absolutely. Thank
fantastic.
you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Now, I'd love to, we're sort of coming towards the end, and I would be easily going on with this conversation for absolutely ages. Now, so I would love to know from you, here's something. What are the benefits of what you're doing with regards to communication? What benefits are there for people, and how has it benefited you over the years in your personal and in your professional life?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the question,
And
Yaja.
how can we benefit from
Yeah,
this?
I love that. To be straight to the point, I get results. End
Mm,
of story. We're
got it.
all, and I don't mean that black and white.
Yeah.
I get results for those whom I'm working with.
Yeah.
And I'm not scared to ask the questions, to delve deep and extract what's relevant to be able to move people
Right.
and get them results. So when I get results holistically.
Yeah.
It's moving the person, it's extracting the best from them, it's inspiring them and shifting the way in which they think. It's been able to help them move forward and achieve what they want to achieve, and be it in their personal or professional environment. So when we get results as business owners, as organizations, as leaders, so do others.
Yes, yes. As
So
long as it's with that attitude of making it about others.
correct.
Yes.
Results will come. This is where my belief, and this is why my underlying tagline is communicate, connect, and influence. Because
Yeah.
here's the thing: when we are able to communicate effectively, this then allows us to connect deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, influence just flows.
Yeah. We don't have to make it an effort.
No, you can't make someone do what they don't want to do, that you don't want to be that person. I certainly don't. And I don't want to be
Yeah.
that leader who
Yeah.
forces people to do stuff. I mean, that's just crap. It just doesn't
Absolutely.
work. And culture doesn't sit well there. And people don't want to be there. And they
Yeah.
just come for the pay packet. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to have people around me leading an organization where people are there for the pay packet. I want it to be
Yes.
deeper than that.
Yes.
And so when we're able to influence and get results, that's what I mean about that. So
Yeah.
get results holistically.
And the example I think that you shared earlier about that bank person calling,
Mm.
she spent time communicating, she
Oh,
spent time connecting, and the influence was natural. She didn't have to intentionally influence you in any way, and yet you have remembered her in ways that no one else could have managed to be remembered, simply because of how she communicated in the first instance.
absolutely. And I wanted to give more then. So it's this law
Yeah.
of influence, this law
Yes.
of reciprocity, Cialdini's laws. I love them. And they're so damn true
Yes.
in that she made me feel so important to her. She
Love it.
made me feel like I was the only human around at that point. And so I wanted to give back even more.
Mm.
Imagine if we could do that in the workplace, you
Yes.
know, and we can.
Yes. Yes. We
We
can and we should.
absolutely
We
can.
must.
I've done it. I've led 8 teams to their
Yes.
success. So I don't see why you can't either. It's just a matter of being able to build and learn those skills and develop them even more. Now, one of
Yeah.
the questions you asked
Yes.
me too, Yaja, just so that
How
I
can
can
we
cover it
benefit?
quick, because I am mindful of the time too, is
Yes.
that you said, what about in my personal life? Well, here's the thing. It's
Mm.
helped me to build incredible relationships with my children,
Love that.
with my grandchildren, and
Yes.
teach them even more, but also my partner. And it's pretty much, it's also a way in which it's helped me to build a relationship with everybody around me. But
Yeah.
what's even more wonderful is that it's a domino effect thing. So
Yes.
people
Yes.
learn. It's addictive, this
Yeah.
behavior, and we start to pick up. I hear my kids using my language, and it's like, oh, I can't fight with that. I've got this. I mean, that's how kids
That's
think.
right. And it's interesting. They're using language that is
Yeah,
really valuable,
yeah.
and so you can't fight with that. And it's interesting when we use language that isn't helpful and our children follow, then we anyway, that's another area that
Yeah.
is very interesting.
It
Yes.
is, but if I can just add one more thing, because this is really important. What
Yes.
it has taught me to is that it's helped me to surround myself with people who I want to be around,
Love that.
with people who lift me up and don't hold me back and keep me small.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're able to effectively communicate, connect, we're
We
connecting with the right
empower.
people.
Yes, we empower and
We
we
do.
become empowered.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I love that.
we do.
That I dig that. And look, Alex, thank you so much for all that. I absolutely love it. Now, again, I'm also conscious of the time. You have a program that actually encompasses much of, if not all of, what you've been discussing today. Um, can you tell us a bit about it? How can we find out about it? When is it?
Yep, great question.
Mm.
I have many programs, but one in particular is where I, in a couple of weeks' time, I think it's the 5th of September, I
Yep.
think the date, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm running a half-day training on how to connect or how to better connect and communicate and build those relationships online, I guess, given the circumstances at the moment. So
Yes.
there's that program coming up. I've also got, the mentoring, reset your mentoring program to be able to up level your mentoring skills as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to offer too is that I am offering a free, 30-minute consult where we pull it apart of where you're at in terms of how better you can communicate and connect with the
Yeah.
people
Fantastic.
around you from a mentoring perspective.
I love that. I love that. That's
Mhm.
awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. And of course, as with the other speakers, we'll be posting those details tonight in an email together with well, a very good chance that the recordings will also be ready today.
Awesome.
Touch wood, and as long as all goes well. Otherwise, the links are definitely going to be included tonight in tonight's email. So I'm really loving that. Thank you so much. Do you have any final words of wisdom, of advice, or any thoughts that you might like us to take away with us in particular?
Yeah, great question. I think I've covered most of them, but Yaja, one thing is just it's okay to be human. We allow and we let the masks in which we hide behind, those titles and positions in which we hide behind, to become our barrier, our barricade. It barricades us from building relationships. They're
Nice.
just a title. They're nothing. They're really
Yeah.
nothing. What
Yes.
makes
Yes.
person is
Yes.
how we behave, who we
Yes.
are being. And that I cannot stress how important that is,
Yeah.
particularly if you're at a level of leadership, like if you're a leader.
Mm,
It's really important to use those titles as power, absolutely, but as resourceful power, um, and
absolutely.
to be able to move those people. And you're all, at the end of the day, the way I've always led my teams is that how can we do this together? I've
Yeah.
got this title that I can bring all of your ideas and I can do something with that. So let's have your ideas and let me use my title to be able to make stuff happen that you bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's allowing that growth, that
I
evolvement.
dig
That
that.
just,
Yeah.
they
I
just
love that.
they mean nothing, truly,
That's
apart from the ability to change things.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, so true.
yeah,
That's awesome, Alex. Now, just before we finish off, now there was something there that, oh, yes, Rebecca was also saying, don't be intimidated by other people's titles and position. I love that thought. We are all human. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I like the concept. And this is from Stephen, positioning your physiology. Yeah,
yeah.
which is
Thanks,
really
Stephen.